Welcome to another edition of Close Mode, the Enterprise Sales Show. I'm Brian Dietmeyer, CEO of Close Strong AI, the home of precision guided selling. And today, I'm really lucky to be here with Austin Smith, who's an enterprise account exec with Umnitsa. And if you're not familiar with Umnitsa, which is a pretty cool name, they automate IT workflows using accurate, comprehensive, and actionable technology to enhance compliance, security, productivity, cost efficiency. Does that sound right, Austin? Did I describe your company properly?
Yeah, 100%. And gives complete visibility to the IT environment. Allows you to see your infrastructure, your assets from software, hardware, endpoints, all the above there.
See, I love this. I love, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, the fact that you're an enterprise account exec, like right into sort of selling. Like I got that. It was awesome. Like your pitch was better than mine. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So the topic today, I'm calling it B2B Street Fighting, and that's because I have a book by that name, and typically I'm interviewing sales and revenue leads, and you know when you and I were talking about this, I love offering the perspective from a frontline warrior to keep the B2B Street Fighting metaphor going. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today is your perspective. And I think it will be intriguing for leaders perhaps to hear from, from the front line. So how about let's start at kind of a high level over the last 5 years from a selling perspective. Have you seen market changes and what are they? Has it gotten harder, easier? What comes to mind in terms of, man, here's how it's changed since 5 years?
100%. 100% has changed. And I'll
Wow.
give a caveat. Every market, every company is different. If you're in security, AI, those two spaces, strong market. If you're in other spaces, might not be seen as strong. Overall, I would say probably it's gotten a lot harder. You look at a few things. Close rates have gone down. If you look at data across the board, if you look at prospecting numbers, it takes a lot more cold calls to book a meeting, to even get a connect. A lot of those are true today than it was 5 years ago. And I think a lot of that comes from, interest rates are high. There's not free money going around. Companies are cautious of, are we going to go into a recession or not? They need to be more cautious of how they're spending money as a result. So they're not as eager to A, get into a conversation, and B, to even buy. I mean, if you look at the average cycle of a sales cycle, it's getting extended out a little bit. So overall, I'd say across the board, it's getting a little harder.
So yeah, I mean, I've heard, and I wonder how this applies to your pipeline. I've heard that like at a high level, especially in tech, we used to have 6x pipe of pipe to goal, and now a lot of people are saying 2x at best. How does that feel in terms of your pipeline?
Yeah, I think every company's different. So I'll speak to what I've seen and where I'm at now. I think reps should still go in with the focus of need to have 3 to 4x pipeline, because and it's the classic phrase, pipeline cures all.
Yes.
I'm not at Salesforce anymore, so I can't speak to what Salesforce is doing, what they're not doing. But I've read on LinkedIn that Salesforce is now having their reps aim for 4x pipeline. Meaning we got to have more in there because we know it's a little bit harder to get deals done. We have to have things come through and plug in and out if need be.
Yeah, and I wonder. So how have those changes impacted? How have you had to adjust your approach to selling over those 5 years? Like your reaction to these market shifts?
Yeah, I think a big part of mine is being more focused on building my own pipeline. There's a few things that have happened. Number one, it's harder for BDRs, SDRs to book meetings and to help you build their pipeline. And number two, a lot more companies are trying to drive more efficiency. And so they want AEs to build pipeline as well. And so like the biggest change in my end is being more focused, being more intentional on building my own pipeline, making sure I'm hitting X amount of calls per week, make sure I'm sending X amount of emails, sending X amount of LinkedIn messages, those types of things. And then also tracking, when I'm actually in the sales cycle, am I following all the right plays in terms of challenger, making sure I have a why buy now, those marked off, and then also the medic, making sure I'm aligned on that throughout the sales cycle, and then making sure I have an understanding of like how many people we're dealing with, running a right sales cycle instead of just trying to get quick wins, basically.
Yeah, I wonder too. One of the analysts that I talked to, he's made the argument that in this market, uh, we need to close a bigger percentage of a smaller pipe, and the argument you're making is no, continue to pour more in my pipe and do more myself. So is there what would you say to that notion that another prescription for this is to just work harder on those deals that are in there and close a higher percent?
I think that's a great question. So perception on that is the analyst is probably right. Like you got to be more focused on closing what's in the pipeline because it is harder to build pipeline right now, as I mentioned. However, I don't. I think as a salesperson, if I go into the mindset of, oh, I'm good with 2x pipeline, like I'll get to my number if I just focus on the deals with 2x pipeline. There's too much risk involved in that, and
It's yeah, Austin. It's so funny you say that. Like that risk thing was just bouncing around in my brain, and that no, this is cool because there's a difference between like, what my analyst friends are saying, and yeah, that struck me at the same time you said that. So I want to, especially for leaders who are listening, back when I was in a big corporation, a Fortune 50, one of my favorite. There's a lot of exercises in team meetings that I didn't like, but one of the ones that I thought was really helpful was this more of, less of, same of. And we use this construct a lot in meetings, and so I want to talk about that a little bit with you, like what you need, and if you want to broaden it to peers maybe doing similar jobs, like what do you guys need in terms of more of, less of, same of. So let's start with the tough part, which is less of. And I encourage you, like, we need a really honest answer to this question. Like, what do you need less of? Just stop asking me for this stuff, whatever it is.
yeah, I think less of like a one size fits all approach. There are certain companies where you go in there and they say, hey, our reps are going to have to hit X amount of calls per week, X amount of emails, X amount of LinkedIn. And I think I'm a big baseball fan, so I'll use a baseball analogy. If there's pitchers that throw 100 miles per hour and they're going to get just as many people out that are, might be a junk ball thrower. Like Tom Glavine threw 89 miles per hour, but he still got a lot of people out. A Nolan
Yeah.
Ryan throwing 100 miles per hour, still got a lot of people out. So there's just different approaches, and there's different approaches with sales rep. There's a sales rep that might be really good on the phones. There's another sales rep that might be really good, sending out LinkedIn's or emails. I just don't think there's a one size fits all. So less of, trying to make all AEs take that one size fits all approach.
Yeah. No, I actually think that's really good feedback, and there's been a lot of, from my opinion, like industrialization of selling, right? Like here's the factory line. We're rolling out this stuff, and we went from like maybe not enough data and analytics to too much data and analytics and process. So I think that's fair. It's like, yeah. So not putting words in your mouth, but it's like, maybe don't dog me the same as you dog someone else. Like have a personalized approach to stuff. How about same of? Are there things that some kind of support you're getting from sales enablement or sales leadership that's working?
Yeah, I do. I will say because pipeline is a little bit harder to come by, and because there might not be as much, I do think sales leadership across the board has gotten more involved into deals. It's become team selling has become a bigger
Hmm.
focus overall. When does a team lose its team? I'd keep that same approach, and I'd keep that even when we get back to a great market, healthy market. Like keep the team selling approach going.
And do you think that's actually a really good point, because I've talked a lot about this. I mean, we know that frontline sales leadership just cannot find the time to get after coaching on the more complex deals. It is funny too. I was talking to one leader and a sales leader, and he was like, "Make the time." And it's
Yeah.
so funny when he said that to me, you're right, because everybody's like, oh, we have all this reporting, we have all this stuff, we don't really have time to do it. And I love that notion. Like if you prioritize something, you can make time, that this is more important. And so and where do you think that support, so if you look at your whole pipe, like what percentage or what deals is there, because obviously you're like, hey, I don't need support on all my transactions, but where would you raise your hand and say, hey, come in and support me on this one? What kind of things trigger that?
Well, I think so. That's a good question. I don't know if I have the silver bullet on that. The
Yeah.
way I would approach that is you never want your one-on-one to be deal reviews. However, I do think it's good to be on the same page with my manager on like the deals in my pipeline. And so even if it's just hey, I saw we have this S2 or this sales accepted lead come into play. Like if the sales manager asks, like, what support do you need from my end? Or if I'm a rep, like I should be sharing, full transparency with my manager saying, hey, I've got this,
Yeah.
new lead, or I've got this new opportunity. I just think constant communication of what's going on in the pipeline is important.
Yeah.
So I think that'll
Yeah.
solve
And
that.
yeah, it's funny too, because I think about that, I was in the human services coaching business before this, and now in the AI coaching business. And we really have to define the difference between skills coaching and deal
Mhm.
coaching. And even with deal coaching, like someone called it like interrogation. Like interrogation is not helpful, or auditing, that kind of thing. And I wonder, how does that separate in your mind, this notion of skills coaching, and do we need that versus deal coaching? What would you say is more helpful?
I don't know if there's one where I'd say one over the other. And the reason I
Okay.
say that is I think both are critically important, because I think we've all been in organizations where the deal coaching is just not there,
Yeah.
and leadership is afraid to poke holes in deals, and just like everyone gets happy ears. I mean, it's great. It feels great, but at the end of the quarter, things can fall off.
Yeah.
I'd say you got to be rigorous with deal coaching, but at the right time. Like a
Yeah.
one-on-one, everyone's different, so I'll say what I like. Like a one-on-one,
Yeah.
going through skills coaching. Hey, we should be taking this approach on this deal, that type of thing. And maybe on a forecast call or a pipeline review. That's when you have because you have more people involved. People can give their perspective on what's going on with this deal. That's where you can really dig in, poke holes, and do more of the deal coaching
Yeah.
type of,
Yeah, because
type of play.
I feel like part of that is, I think of it as de-risking a deal. Like back when I was doing a
Exactly.
lot of this live in the human services environment, which does, you said poking holes, and it's like it is de-risking. It's like we have to look for disconfirming data, right? What are the red flags? Where is this deal at risk, and let's get after that. The other thing that I heard a sales leader say to me on this podcast a couple months ago was, that notion of getting in and not only saying, hey, we don't have access to this buying influence, we should get access to this buying, but it's going to the next level and saying, let's figure out how to do that. Like, I'm going to add value to you, Austin, in this call, and let's figure out how do we get to that buying influence. It resonated with me. I wonder if it does with you.
Well, that resonates big time, because it goes back to the point we talked about earlier, which is the importance of continuing team selling, because like the reviews on deal coaching, all of that gives an opportunity to drive even more team selling. Because if a leader says, hey, we're missing the opportunity here because we're not at X, Y, and Z leader, we haven't talked to the economic buyer, that leader can then step up to the plate. They can say, hey, let me shoot this email. Let me give a call, get involved with the deal. So it's like you're doing two things at one there as a leader. My perspective on the front
Yeah.
line is you're helping the rep understand, here's a hole, here's how we need to improve. But B, you're also showing that rep of like, I really care about driving success in your deal. I'm involved now. And so it just builds even more goodwill overall.
Yeah. My last question is, I want you to blue sky a little bit and really open up your creative
Yeah.
hat, and this is, sort of more of something that's kind of missing. And Austin, as you think about the answer, I'm thinking about like maybe something from revenue enablement, or something from the sales leaders, or marketing, or ops. Like what do we on the streets need more of that kind of doesn't exist? If you could wave that magic wand and make something appear, what would that look like?
Just creative approaches, honestly, creative approaches across the board. Like sales ops could be more creative with the reports that they offer, that they create. A great report we're running at Unitza is the customers, people who are at new companies who are previous customers of ours. Our sales ops make sure they're sharing with us that report when we start.
Yeah.
More reports like that can help us identify people to go after. They're almost like hot leads at that point. Marketing, getting more creative of doing certain campaigns that can drive leads, and even sales leadership, getting more creative of how do we build pipeline, how do we run certain deals. The previous company I was at did something that was really great, and I think this is pretty strong in this environment specifically. They would have field days once a quarter where everyone on the team would go out in the field, and they would pick X amount of companies where we drop off donuts to a leader and their team,
Yep.
as well as a one pager. And you always get
Yep.
people to respond, say, hey, I'm interested, or no, I'm not it's a creative approach. So what we can do more of, just more creativity across the board.
Interesting. It's cool to hear that because I did just hear that again the other day that it's like it's harder and some people are arguing like you talked about like bringing donuts. It's like that's exactly the conversation I had the other day that we've got to think about stuff. Some of it that we used to do that went away when everybody went to Zoom. Let's
Yeah.
show up in somebody's place. So I think I think there is an idea with creativity. How about I do have two more questions similar to that. I know a lot of frustrations. Not only, well, I'm going to talk to you about deal approval, what we often call the internal negotiation, right? And
Mhm.
how do I get this deal pushed through? And I know the folks who run deal desks and stuff are frustrated with the process. I know, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. A lot of reps are frustrated with that process. Is there something from your perspective that could be done to grease the skids to get those internal deals done more, in a more effective and efficient manner?
Yeah, and let me make sure I'm clarifying
Yeah.
correctly. So are you talking about we've got pricing approved, the customer's ready to buy, and we're at the last stage, and sales ops needs to get a contract in place, get that sent out to the customer. Is that what we're talking about, or a different aspect of the deal?
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. The two schools. I'm glad you asked that follow up. The two schools of thought I've heard around this are like we either are begging for permission or for forgiveness, right? We're trying
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
deals done. It's like when I'm allowed to go put something in front of a customer, what hurdles do I have to jump through? And I find in most organizations now it's less about forgiveness where you're going after the fact, and it's more about permission. And I just wonder, that like before you're allowed to put pricing or solution config in front of a customer or terms, is there anything that can make that process better?
I just think full transparency on
Yeah,
these aspects and getting a exact process in place. Meaning, hey, if it's a 25% discount, this has to be approved by a manager or a director. If it's
yeah,
40% discount, it's got to be approved by a CRO, whoever else might need to approve. And just making sure those are fully displayed, even on, if you're using Salesforce CPQ,
yeah.
having that note in CPQ or anything else. That way everyone knows kind of what the rules are. No one's going to have this awkward, should I, shouldn't I? Everyone knows what to do at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, clarity makes total sense. Yeah, and the last piece of that is competitive insight. Like, do you feel like you have enough, like at the granular level, to kind of pitch your value versus competing alternatives?
I would say I think so. And the reason I
Okay,
say that is I'm week number 3 at NHTSA. And so I feel as though I've gotten a good amount of
right.
and work ramp, battle cards, all of that. But
Yeah.
until I'm day in, day out in the field, I can't necessarily say, but I think so is what I'll say.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, this is it's really helpful, and I'm glad you and I decided to do this because to me it's a reality check. Talking to so many leaders and to get this reality check of what's happening and what you're seeing. So, yeah, you've been super generous with your time and your ideas, and I hope those leaders I've been interviewing will take a moment and hear from the front line, as it were. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Great conversation. Appreciated your insight today too.